In the shadowy depths of the Amazon rainforest, where life and death entwine in an endless, primal waltz, a jaguar prowls, its regal silhouette marred by a grotesque, pulsing wound that looks more like a nightmare sculpted by nature itself. At first glance, you might think a fallen tree or an ancient scar. But this monstrous lesion is something far more macabre, a hive, writhing and alive with hundreds of bees, embedded into the flesh of the jaguar with relentless, buzzing fury. The sight is sickening, yet fascinating, a living horror film etched onto the canvas of the wild. This is not a tale of predator and prey, but a sinister symbiosis, a dark chapter where the hunter becomes the host to an insidious infestation. The wound is a crater carved deep into the jaguar's side, swollen and weeping, with honeycomb-like structures built painstakingly by the invading bees. Their miniature bodies, hard and glossy, swarm in and out of the jaguar's flesh. Their collective hum, a disturbing soundtrack to this living siege. The smell is thick and cloying, a mix of rot, sweat, and the sweet sickliness of feral honey, a sensory assault that drags you into this visceral tableau. What might once have been a simple scrape or puncture has become a bioengineered fortress of wax and venom, an unsettling marriage of flesh and insect architecture. This macabre hive wound isn't just a random encounter with disease or injury, it is the outcome of a rare and brutal infestation. The bees in question are not the gentle pollinators one might romanticize, but aggressive, sting-armed marauders that exploit the jaguar's vulnerability with chilling efficiency. They select weakened or wounded hosts, burrowing in the shadowed corners of a forgotten farm. Amongst the scattered wreckage of what once was a peaceful pasture lies a grotesque spectacle of nature's uncontrolled fury, a goat, its flayed skin grotesquely distorted by a beehive-shaped wound, pulsating with an unnatural hive of buzzing torment. What first appears as a mere injury unfolds into a complex, harrowing tableau of infestation and symbiosis gone awry. This is no ordinary scratch or bite, but a living nightmare where the boundaries between victim and habitat blur into a disturbing fusion of flesh and exoskeleton. The air is thick with the incessant hum of relentless bees, their thrumming wings creating a sinister soundtrack to this macabre coexistence, turning the animal into a grotesque host, an unwilling architect of its own suffering. The wound itself is a cavernous network of swollen, honeycomb-like pockets embedded deep into the goat's undulating skin. Each cell within this ghastly structure is filled with a murky, viscous fluid mingled with blood and pus, a grotesque parody of the golden sweetness one might expect from a beehive. This is not the melodic music of pollinators supporting life, but the harsh dirge of nature's cruelty seeping through raw flesh, where bees, driven by instinct or madness, have turned a living creature into an unnatural hive. The bees, creatures known for their role as guardians of flowers, here become parasitic colonizers, their small, segmented bodies crawling and burrowing into the compromised skin, risking stings and death in service of this grotesque occupation. Their usually ornate hexagonal structures are disorganized and fused with the wound, creating a horrifying amalgamation of living gore and buzzing insect life. Bee infestation on goats is not a widely studied phenomenon, yet the process that leads to this morbid in the shadowed depths of a dense jungle, where sunlight struggles to pierce through the tangled canopy, a grim spectacle unfolds. There, a jaguar, once a sleek embodiment of power and grace, now bears an abomination upon its flank, an enormous, festering hive, swollen and grotesque. This horrifying wound, as if ripped from a nightmare, reveals the brutal truth of survival intersecting with nature's own dark machinery. The jaguar, a creature of stealth and dominance, is imprisoned by a parasitic infestation of bees that have turned its flesh into a living fortress, pulsating with the relentless industriousness of hundreds, perhaps thousands, of stinging insects. It is both fascinating and repugnant, a macabre tapestry of carnivore and colony locked in a grim embrace of suffering and exploitation. The hive is not simply an external anomaly. It is a complex, organic structure grafted onto the jaguar's body, growing in layers of wax and bee-produced propolis, cementing the colony to the living host. The bees, driven by instinct, have evidently found an unusual opportunity to thrive, their numbers swelling as they build combs interlaced with the jaguar's torn skin and flowing blood. Their presence introduces a bizarre biological paradox. In a quiet corner of a sunburnt paddock, there lies a spectacle so grotesque it defies casual glance. Here, perched amidst the swaying grass, A horse with a wound like a living honeycomb moves awkwardly, a dark cinematic tableau of nature twisted into horror. This is no ordinary injury. It is a festering hive of bees, an infestation both fascinating and repulsive, a clash between the calm nobility of equine grace and the buzzing terror of an unexpected parasite colony. The foul intertwining of flesh and wax, blood and nectar evokes a visceral reaction, a thirst to understand how this creature became a living host for thousands of stinging invaders. The injury begins as a dark, reddened patch on the horse's side, inflamed and cracked like the driest desert earth. Upon closer inspection, this cracked terrain reveals itself to be a complex network of bee cells. These cells are not merely built atop the skin, but seem to erupt organically from the wound, glistening with an eerie translucence. The bees, thousands of them, crawl relentlessly in and out of this hive, filling the air with a low, relentless hum, punctuated by the occasional sharp sting taken by the traumatized animal. The horse's skin around the wound is swollen, glistening with pus, and a slick sheen that smells faintly of decomposing flora and fermented honey, an olfactory assault that confirms the severity of this macabre infestation. To understand the depth of this plague, one must delve into the biology of bees and the subtle, nocturnal tragedy that befell this horse. Bees, typically seen as industrious pollinators, can become fierce protectors when their colonies are threatened or when the search for new nesting grounds drives them into unusual territory. In this unholy alliance, the horse's whelm became a sanctuary. Where one might expect flies or bacteria to colonize an open sore, these bees took residence, layering waxy cells and creating combs as if the wound were a tree hollow or a hive box.